The day I told my boss I was pregnant, he smiled. But the next morning I was fired, no warning, no explanation, just gone. But that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning of karma knocking on his door. If you'd told me a year ago that one sentence could cost me my job, my confidence, and my stability, I would have laughed. But it only took 3 words to bring my entire world crashing down. I am pregnant. My name is Claire Monroe. I was 34, living in a small town outside of Manchester, working at a mid-size marketing firm that prided itself on being progressive. You know the type. Beanbags in the meeting room, mental health Mondays, yoga lunch breaks, a place that sold itself as family-friendly. But the moment I became an actual family, they dropped me like I was radioactive. I was 5 months into my pregnancy. It wasn't exactly showing much. I had been hiding it with loose sweaters, mostly because I didn't want to deal with the questions. But I'd reached that point where I couldn't avoid it anymore. And I didn't want to. I was excited, nervous, yes, but excited to finally share the news with people I worked with every day, especially with my boss, Darren Chambers. Darren was slick, always dressed in expensive suits even though the office was casual. He was in his early 40s, charming in that rehearsed way. People liked him, or pretended to. But underneath the smile, there was something cold about him. A transactional energy. If you were useful, he noticed you. If you weren't, you disappeared. I guess I didn't realize how fast that disappearing act would apply to me. The day I told him, we were in his office for my performance review. I had a list of all. The campaigns I'd led, the numbers I'd driven up, the late nights I'd pulled. I had everything ready to prove why I deserved the raise I'd been quietly promised. But I decided to start with the news. Darren, I said, I just wanted to let you know, I'm expecting. I'm 5 months along. He froze. It was subtle. A twitch, the jaw, a flicker in the eye. But for someone who makes his living reading people, I didn't miss it. Then came the smile. Congratulations, Claire, he said smoothly. That's wonderful news. I wanted to believe him. I even smiled back, told him I'd already started planning how I'd manage my workload, that I was fully committed to staying productive until my maternity leave, that I even wanted to return. Afterward, he nodded through it all, said he appreciated the heads up, told me we'd talk about next steps next week. I walked out of his office thinking I'd done everything right, but by the next morning, my company email was locked. My work laptop wouldn't let me log in. I got a call from HR. No, not a call. An email. A sterile, cold email stating that my position was no longer required due to internal restructuring. Internal restructuring? I had literally led the top-performing campaign that month. I called. No one answered. I texted Darren. He replied once. Sorry, Claire. It was out of my hands. Lies. It was entirely in his hands. I sat on the floor of my tiny flat, staring at the wall, my hand on my belly. For the first time in months, I cried. Not soft, movie scene tears. I'm talking the ugly, full-body sobs that make you gasp for air. How do you tell your unborn child that the world is already unfair? I wasn't just fired. I was erased, cut off from my health insurance, stripped of income, isolated from colleagues, who suddenly stopped returning my messages. One day, I was part of a team. The next, I was a ghost. I spent the next week applying for unemployment, calling legal helplines, and trying to make sense of what happened. Every lawyer I talked to said the same thing. It sounds illegal, but it's hard to prove intent. Intent. Darren's smile had been so polished, so fake, I could still hear it ringing in my ears. But something strange started happening. 2 weeks after I was let go, a former colleague, Sophie, reached out to me. Claire, she whispered over the phone, you didn't hear this from me, okay? But Darren told the team your position was eliminated because you were mentally distracted and it was affecting your performance. I blinked. What? He said you had trouble focusing, that you were off your game recently. No mention of the pregnancy. I felt sick. Then she added something that made my stomach drop even more. and he's already hired someone to replace you. A 24-year-old intern he promoted last week. That was it. That was the moment everything inside me snapped. They thought I'd just go away quietly, but I was carrying a life. And if I didn't stand up now, what kind of mother would I be? I began documenting everything. Emails, messages, call logs. I went through every report I'd sent before I was fired. Every chart that proved my performance was still excellent. I compiled screenshots, saved voicemails, even asked Sophie to write a statement if she was ever willing. Then I posted a single, carefully written paragraph on LinkedIn, not naming the company, not naming Darren, just a warning for other women. In the workplace, sometimes the very moment you need your employer's support the most is the exact moment they vanish. I was 5 months pregnant when I was let go. I was told it was restructuring, but what really got restructured was my trust. Within 48 hours, the post had over 10,000 reactions. Messages started flooding in, women from all over Europe, some sharing their stories, some offering job leads, others offering legal help. And then came the message I didn't expect, from a journalist. The message from the journalist was simple. "Hi Claire, I read your post. Would you be open to speaking about your experience? We're working on a feature about pregnancy discrimination in the workplace." At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be the face of anything. I was still emotionally raw, and every time I saw Darren's name or thought about that day, my chest tightened. But then I remembered the messages I had received, so many from women who had quietly endured the same treatment. Maybe I couldn't fight this for myself, but I could fight it for all of them. I messaged the journalist back, and 2 days later, we met at a small cafe downtown. She was in her early 30s, warm and sharp-eyed, named Rachel Dean. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything, from the smile Darren gave me after I told him I was pregnant, to the locked-out email, to Sophie's call. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Claire, this isn't just a story," she said. "This is a pattern we've seen in companies that claim to be modern and inclusive. If you're comfortable, I want to run this story with your name. We'll protect you legally, and we won't name the company unless you want us to." I paused. Then, I said, "Let them know who they really are." 3 weeks later, the article was published, "Pregnant and Fired. One Woman's Fight Against Corporate Hypocrisy." It spread like wildfire. I didn't expect it to be that big, but it landed on every platform. The headline trended on Twitter. Influencers shared it. People started tagging the company. The hashtag #PregnantNotProblem went viral. But what happened next shocked even me. Former employee of the same company messaged me. "Emily, who had worked in HR. Claire, I read your story. I used to work with Darren. I left 2 years ago after he forced out another pregnant colleague. Her name was Jasmine. She never fought back." And then another message, and another. Within days, I had 5 separate messages from women who had either been quietly pushed out, reassigned to meaningless roles, or given performance warnings right after disclosing their pregnancies. One message broke me. I miscarried at 6 months because I was too scared to take time off. Darren told me if I left early again, I might not have a job to return to. That was it. The moment it turned from personal pain to public reckoning. Rachel followed up with a second article. This time she named the company, A Culture of Silence. Inside the marketing firm that punished pregnant employees, it was like setting off a grenade. Suddenly, other media outlets picked up the story. A petition started online demanding a formal investigation. The company's PR team released a bland, deflecting statement. "We are committed to supporting women in the workplace and take these allegations seriously." But it was too late. The court of public opinion had already spoken. Then came the cherry on top. I received a message from someone I never expected. Harriet Kingston, a member of Parliament known for her advocacy on women's rights. "Claire, your story has reached the House. I want to meet you. We're working on new employment protection legislation, and your testimony could help shape it." I was stunned. From unemployed and invisible to standing at the threshold of change, it was overwhelming. I didn't even know what to wear to meet. An MP, We met at her office, a tall building with glass walls and fast-walking assistants. Harriet was elegant, articulate, and had a fire in her voice that I admired instantly. "Claire," she said, "this isn't about one company. This is systemic. If we can prove that this happened repeatedly, we can make pregnancy discrimination a punishable offense with real consequences. But we need documentation." I gave her everything. My emails, my written statements, the testimonies from other women. She looked through it all, nodded slowly, and said, "Let's bring them down properly." Meanwhile, Darren was spiraling. He hadn't said anything publicly, but I knew from a friend still at the company that the pressure was getting to him. "He's been pulled into 5 board meetings in 2 weeks," she said. "Clients are starting to drop. HR is panicking. I should have felt satisfied. But part of me still felt hollow. Because despite everything, no one had formally apologized. Not Darren, not the company, not even a whisper of remorse. It wasn't about revenge anymore. I just wanted accountability. Then one day, it came. My doorbell rang. It was a courier. A thick envelope with a gold-embossed return address. Inside was a letter from the company's legal department and a check, $40,000, labeled "Settlement for Wrongful Termination. No admission of guilt." My heart pounded. I called my lawyer. "You don't have to accept this," he said. "It's hush money. They want you to disappear before the investigation gets worse." But I didn't want to disappear. I wanted this to go further. "Decline it," I said. "I want this on record." The lawyer sighed. "You're brave, Claire. Most don't go this far." "I'm not most," I said. And I meant it. The 3rd article dropped a week later. This time, the focus was entirely on Darren. Multiple sources, multiple accounts, names, faces, all pointing to a pattern of intimidation, manipulation, and quiet terminations. Rachel didn't hold back. How one man's ego cost women their careers and nearly their babies. It was brutal and poetic. Within 48 hours of that article going live, Darren Chambers was suspended indefinitely pending investigation. The firm issued a second statement. "We take these allegations seriously. Darren Chambers has been placed on leave while we cooperate fully with government inquiries." But for the first time, people weren't buying it. Clients started withdrawing contracts. 2 board members resigned. Investors began to pull out, and then I got the call I never expected. "Claire," a voice said, "we'd like to offer you your job back with a promotion, full benefits, and back pay." I laughed, not kindly. "No, thank you," I said. "You don't get to fire me for being pregnant and hire me back to fix your reputation." I hung up. Then I posted the call log to LinkedIn with one sentence. "You don't get to silence me with a promotion you never offered when I was most vulnerable." Bye. Now I was in my 8th month, slower, tired. But every morning I woke up to messages from women saying, "You gave me courage," and that mattered more than any job title. One message I'll never forget came from a woman in France. "Claire, I was going to quit my job today. My boss told me I was a liability after my pregnancy announcement. Then I saw your story. I recorded our conversation. I'm taking it to court." This wasn't just about me anymore. It was a movement. I always thought my baby's first cry would be the most emotional moment of my life. I was wrong. It was the sound of Darren Chambers' name being officially struck from the company register, announced live on a government broadcast that made my hands tremble and my heart thump in disbelief. The company I once served with loyalty had turned into a symbol of corporate rot, and it was finally being held accountable. By then, I was in a hospital bed, my daughter sleeping peacefully beside me in a tiny transparent crib. I named her Isla, after my grandmother. She came 3 weeks early but was healthy and loud and everything I had fought for. As I held her, headlines popped up on my phone. Marketing CEO removed after allegations of pregnancy discrimination. Lawmakers introduce new bill inspired by whistleblower. Claire Turner. Pregnant Not Problem movement pushes for global workplace reform. I wasn't just a fired employee anymore. I was the woman who said no and didn't back down. The public support was overwhelming. Flowers from strangers, letters from mothers, a thank you card from a group of women in Ireland who had formed a legal aid group after reading my story. Even Hollywood got interested. A film producer reached out via email. "Claire, I know this sounds sudden, but your story is everything audiences are hungry for: truth, resilience, justice. Would you consider selling the rights for a screenplay?" I almost laughed. This was surreal. I hadn't even unpacked Isla's hospital bag yet, and now someone wanted to put my life on screen? But part of me understood why. In a world so full of quiet resignation, one woman standing up and being heard was rare, and people craved it. Of course, not everyone was supportive. There were trolls, commenters calling me an attention seeker, men telling me to just move on. Even a few women said I had invited trouble by making my pregnancy public so soon. But those voices were drowned out. What really mattered were the new laws being drafted. Harriet Kingston, the MP who had championed my cause, messaged me with an update. "Claire, it's happening. The Isla Act, yes, we're naming it after your daughter, will guarantee extended protections for pregnant employees across the UK." I cried. I wasn't hormonal anymore. I was proud. Meanwhile, Darren wasn't just fired. He was investigated. The official review uncovered emails where he referred to pregnant employees as deadweight. One memo even instructed HR to start performance tracking anyone planning to have a family. It was a blueprint for discrimination. Worse still, an audit revealed that the company had quietly settled with at least 9 women in the past 5 years, under NDA agreements. Paid silence, brushed under the rug. But now the rug was on fire. The board dissolved within months. A new leadership team took over. They issued a formal public apology to every woman who had come forward, including me. Letter arrived in my mailbox with the company's new logo and CEO's signature. "Claire, you were right. We failed you. Thank you for holding us accountable." I stared at it for a long time, and then I threw it in the bin. I wasn't interested in their guilt. I was interested in impact, and impact I had. 6 months later, I stood in front of a crowd of 3,000 at the International Women's Conference in Berlin. Isla was at home with my mother, and I was in a navy suit that hid my nervous, shaking hands. I stepped onto the stage. 16 months ago, I was fired for getting pregnant, I began. Today, I stand before you as a mother, a whistleblower, and a woman who said, "Enough." The room went quiet. Then still. We've spent too long making ourselves smaller to keep jobs that were never built for us. Too long hiding our joy and becoming mothers because we knew it would make us targets. That ends now. A standing ovation followed, not because I was some hero, but because I had given voice to a truth every woman already knew. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I video called Isla. She was giggling in her baby bouncer, my mother, waving from behind the screen. "Did you tell them your mummy is a superhero yet?" I joked. My mother smiled. "She's too busy trying to eat her own foot." I laughed. It was the kind of simple, silly joy I had missed during the chaos. And it reminded me what I was really fighting for, not headlines, not awards. Just a future where my daughter would never be punished for being a woman with dreams, a voice, and a womb. Then came something I never expected. An invitation from Parliament, not just to speak, but to consult. They wanted me to help shape future workplace laws, not just the Isla Act, but broader reforms across industries. They even offered to hire me full-time as a policy advisor. I said yes, not because I had political ambitions, but because I knew change needed to come from the inside too. Every woman in every office deserved better. One morning I walked past a cafe near Westminster and saw something that made me stop cold. Darren, alone, unshaven, drinking black coffee and staring at his phone like it owed him a second chance at life. He didn't see me. For a second I considered going in, saying something, closing the loop, but then I realized I didn't need to. I had moved on, built something, left a legacy. He was still trying to salvage a reputation, and that was karma. A year to the day since I was fired, I posted this. 1 year ago, I was terminated for becoming a mother. Today, I'm helping write the laws to make sure no woman ever experiences that again. You tried to end my career. Instead, you launched my mission. It was shared over 100,000 times, and under it, someone had commented, "You didn't just fight back, you changed the game." 5 years later. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as Isla chased bubbles around the backyard. She was 5 now, curious, fearless, and stubborn in all the best ways. Every morning, she insisted on choosing her own outfit, even if it meant polka dot leggings with a superhero cape. I smiled, watching her through the glass as I packed her lunchbox. 5 years. 5 years since the day Darren fired me. 5 years since I'd walked out of that office with swollen feet, blurry eyes, and no idea how I'd survive. And now, I was thriving. I took a bite of toast as I scanned the morning news. The top headline made my chest tighten. Still, even now, third major firm faces lawsuit over pregnancy discrimination under the ISLA Act. The law named after my daughter had become a landmark. It had teeth. It forced companies to report their maternity policies publicly, provide flexible work options, and penalized retaliation. But more than that, it changed how women saw themselves at work. I'd spoken at conferences in Geneva, Brussels, and New York. I'd helped pass companion legislation in Canada and Australia, and I'd built a foundation that offered legal and emotional support to women like me. Single mothers, pregnant students, even immigrant workers who'd been too afraid to speak up. We called it Bright Start. Our motto, "You're not alone." Not anymore. Some days I still got emotional reading the letters. One came from a woman in Bulgaria, a teacher fired at 6 months pregnant. After hearing my story, she'd sued, and won. Another came from a nurse in the Philippines. I played your conference speech to my hospital director. He rehired me the next day. Those stories gave me purpose, but nothing grounded me more than being a mum. Later that afternoon, Isla tugged at my sleeve. "Mummy, can I take your badge to school?" she asked. It was my Parliament lanyard, the one I wore whenever I entered the floor to advise on employment reform. "Why do you want it?" I smiled. "Because you're a law lady, and my teacher said we can dress up as superheroes today." I felt my throat tighten. I knelt beside her. "You know, you're the reason I became one. You made me brave." She hugged me fiercely, cape flapping behind her. That night I tucked her into bed and lingered by the doorway. My phone buzzed. A text from Harriet Kingston, now the Deputy Prime Minister. "Claire, the EU Commission wants to adapt the ISLA Act model. Can we chat tomorrow?" I typed. "Of course. Let's make sure no woman is ever punished for giving life." I put the phone down, walked outside, and looked up at the stars. 5 years ago, I was broken. Now I was building a better world, for Isla, for all our daughters. And every time I saw her laugh or run or dream, I knew Darren had failed in the one thing he tried hardest to do. He didn't silence me, he made me louder.